Good afternoon. We are live at Awake Illinois Facebook page and YouTube. I am Shannon Adcock, founder and president of Awake Illinois. I am joined by Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Ted.
Hey, thanks for having me
So,
on.
yeah, of course. So it's Wednesday, August 31st. We'll give people a few seconds to log in if they maybe are on their lunch break and heard about you joining us for this discussion titled What is Amendment 1? And so before we delve into this topic, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, Ted? I know that you've been working with Wirepoints as president since 2017. You previously served as vice president of policy at the Illinois Policy Institute. 2 decades overseas, helping manage Citibank's operations in Mexico and Poland. And you have a master's in public policy from the University of Chicago and an MBA from the Wharton School. So you're a pretty smart guy, data guy.
I don't know about that, but just like most people, just what do you want to call it? Street smart, I think. I kind of know when we're being swindled or when things aren't being done right, and I do know what taxpayers' rights are and things like that, which most people do, or a lot of people do. A lot of people don't, of course.
Right. Well, I know that your data has come in handy for a lot of people who are in policymaking, and probably more recently, in the last couple of years, the average citizen who is analyzing data and looking at their bank account, looking at their tax bills, looking at different things that might be on the ballot. So I know you've been a really great resource for people. So why don't you just talk a little bit about what Wirepoints is up to, and then we'll delve into the topic.
Yeah, Shannon. There's a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of emotions out there on both sides. And I'm a finance guy and a data guy, and so is my partner Mark Lennon. And so when we started seeing all these crazy messages flying around, nobody agrees with anything anymore. We decided that what was lacking was facts and data. And so there's so much good facts and data that tells you the truth. And so we just lay it
Mhm.
out there. In COVID really, I mean, we've been doing it on pensions and state finances, which that's been a long thing. But COVID really exposed just how bad the state will be in publishing the truth. And so that's our goal, is to not be hyperbolic, to put out the facts, have reason and logic, and persuade people, because the data is pretty damn persuasive if you look at it, if you care about facts. If you don't care about facts, we're not going to convince you of anything. But if you care about trying to get at the bottom of something, we're helpful for that.
Yeah, no, you guys are awesome. So wirepoints.org, it's the website listed behind you there on that panel. People can go to your website and get this very good analytical data. People are commenting on the right. I see Pamela's here and Helen, Linda. So you can tag people if it's your lunch hour. Welcome them into this discussion. You can comment, you can ask questions, and as Ted goes through some visuals and some more information on what Amendment 1 is on the ballot. If you post a question, we'll be checking the comments. So, hi, Marcia. Yes, Wirepoints is amazing. You get a shout out there, Ted.
Oh, that is very kind of her.
Okay, so do you want to delve into what is Amendment 1 on the ballot for the November 8th election? Hopefully everybody's registered to vote. This is a big subject that a lot of people have been talking about, but maybe some people are new to it. So you're going to give people the 411.
Yeah. Look, so I'll do that, and I'm going to share a few slides. Some of them you'll know from when we present what an outlier Illinois has become on so many things. Before I start, Amendment 1, I will argue, is the most important vote that you will make on the ballot in November. So even more important than the governor, Supreme Court, or Attorney General, for example. And the reason why is because it's a constitutional amendment, much like the pension constitutional amendment. So once that thing goes in there, it's going to be really hard to remove, and it's going to dominate how things work with regard to the power of our public sector unions. And Wirepoints is a 501c3, so you won't hear me say yes for this thing or no for that thing. I'm going to kind of try to present both sides. But I'll start with a little bit of where Illinois is right now and go from there. So I'm going to share my screen if I'm successful.
I'll do it for you. I think I just clicked
great.
it for you, Ted, and then I'll hide myself so that there's more room for people to.
And then if I make it full
it.
screen, okay, is that good?
Yeah. Can you hear me still?
Right. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. I'll let you go.
Okay. So before I start, we have to, if we're going to vote on a new amendment that gives the unions in Illinois, especially the public sector unions, the most power in the country, we better know where Illinois stands today. And so I got like 4 or 5 slides. Illinois pays the highest property taxes. This is the percentage of a home value that people pay in property taxes. We are number 1 in the country. Some reports have it as at number 2. But these are all 50 states laid out. We pay the highest property taxes already. So that we should take into account no matter what side of the of where you are on more union power or not.
Right.
We have the biggest pension debts in the country. This is the Moody's number just for the state level pension debts. We dwarf everybody. Even in California and Texas, who are second and third, they're much bigger states than we are, and we still dwarf them. So this again is something that more union power has an impact on. Another painful thing for Illinoisans over the last 20 years, we've had the third worst home value growth in the country. This is our nest egg. And so when we talk about the government that we have here in Illinois, and in particular the public sector unions, they weigh heavily on this graphic. And then, of course, 2 more measures. Let's look at people moving into Illinois and moving out of Illinois. When you do the net of all the people moving in and all the people moving out, since 2000, over the last 20 years, we have lost a net of 1.4 million people. Just
Wow.
that's phenomenal. Think about the tax base that's gone, the entrepreneurs that are gone, the conservatives that are gone. A lot of people are gone, and only New York and California have lost more people. So this is a big deal. And then the last thing, so I argue the 2 measures that we should look at are people staying in the state or leaving, and the last one is, what's our credit score? Everybody knows what a credit score is when you're trying to borrow for a car or for a home. Well, Moody's does the credit scores of every state. And our 3 neighbors, Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri, are AAA rated. They're the pristine credit. They can borrow anytime, really low rates. And then you've got Illinois down at the bottom of the whole country. We're the bottom of the barrel. And Chicago is rated junk. So that kind of tells us where we are with regard to people and with regard to our credit score. So then let's go into the impact of Amendment 1. So let me kind of give you what it says, what the amendment says. It's kind of wonky, and then we'll come back to what opponents and proponents might say. So this thing takes, Illinois already has arguably already the strongest union powers in the country. And what it does is says, forget those laws that we already have that already give them those powers. Let's just put in an amendment into the Constitution that says this: employees shall have the fundamental right to organize and bargain collectively on a whole bunch of issues to protect their economic welfare and safety. This is really important because nobody in the country tries to protect the economic welfare and safety of their workers in the Constitution. And those words, God knows what they mean. They're not defined, but anything could be economic welfare for a union worker. Anything could be safety. So that's part number 1. No laws can diminish collective bargaining rights. So these rights, which will be put on par with the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech in the Illinois Bill of Rights, this right to collectively bargain, no law shall be passed that interferes with, negates, or diminishes those laws. Now, think that word diminish is also in the Pension Protection Clause. It says nothing shall diminish the benefits or blah, 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 blah. So we would have a second amendment that protects the union powers through a word of diminishment. And then the last thing it would do, it would block right to work for the private sector. All of our neighbors except Missouri are right to work. That means in those states that a worker can accept a job without being forced to join the union. Many of the southern states are right to work states. This amendment would block us from becoming a right to work state, meaning that people, regardless of their choice or their preference, would have to join unions as a condition of employment in a unionized shop. All right, so that's what that does. Let me just break it down into what proponents would say. Before that, it's important to understand, and Wall Street Journal just wrote a piece yesterday on it. Amendment 1 does not cover the private sector. It does not improve the rights of the private sectors, their collective bargaining, because federal law preempts that. It's a preemption law where federal government supersedes state laws on private sector collective bargaining. So you will see commercials. You've seen that commercial of the nurse who's saying he wants his
Yes.
safety and rights are all protected. It's all untrue. None of that is true. So read the Wall Street Journal article. We've said it already. And even the sponsor of the bill, Ram Villavalam, said in committee, as federal labor law stands today, the amendment could not apply to the private sector. So all those ads are untrue. All those ads of protection and safety for the private sector unions, no.
Right, which
What
would
you
be
should
hospitals, right? Because they use the nurse as an example. So hospital
correct
workers.
hospital worker, but it could be anywhere.
Sure. Sure.
Um, so this thing is really about one, stopping right to work, so that people are forced to join the unions, and two, it gives massive powers to the unions. So let's talk about that. So if you're a supporter of this, you would probably say something like, "This is great because it makes by far with this constitutional amendment, this would make Illinois the strongest unions in the country, government unions, and they'd
Right.
have more power to fight for higher compensation, more social justice programs, and the tax revenues and the push for tax hikes to get those powers." And there's a lot of people that support that. Um, so that would be one of the big things they would say: more power for the government unions. Um, it also the way it's written is so broad and so vague that, think about it this way, and I know this will make people think about it. With these rights to collectively bargain, you could have a teachers union with the administration of a school district negotiating, let's say sexuality standards, as they're calling it, right? They
Mhm.
could negotiate that, put it in the contract, agree to it. And remember, those agreements are not done in public, they're done in private. So you guys don't get to know what's happening. You only get to find out after the agreement is signed. So then you've got these new sexuality standards in there that you might oppose, or you might support. Okay, whatever. You might support, you might oppose. But because the Constitution protects their rights to collectively bargain, and it says no law shall be passed to diminish those rights, how the heck is anybody going to ever get that out of the agreement?
Mhm.
Again, that's good if you want that, and it's horrible if you don't. So, this they might argue is finally we can negotiate these agreements without these parent groups getting in the way. Much like the guy who was running for governor in Virginia said, right? Why are these parents trying to get into the curriculum? Get them out of the way. Another argument supporters might say is that, hey, this is great because bargaining rights can't be diminished. It's the same kind of protection that the pension protection clause gave. So that would be another good thing for supporters of this amendment. And of course, finally, they'd say, hey, Illinois can't become a right to work state. We won't be like those southern states. We'll be like California and New York. That's what they would say. Opponents would say something like this: Illinois can't afford to have the most extreme public union powers in the country. They're already some of the strongest in the country. And with this amendment, Illinois would have more powers than any other state. We already have the highest property taxes. We've already seen parents' rights be destroyed by what we saw in COVID. Giving them more power would be really bad. Another argument opponents might say is that only the public sector union powers and benefits are constitutionally protected, but ordinary Illinoisans don't get any such pensions. They don't get or benefits. They don't get lifetime pensions. They don't get 5-year contracts. They don't get guaranteed raises in those contracts. All that stuff. But ordinary Illinoisans are forced to pay for the public who gets those. So why are we constitutionally enshrining those benefits when ordinary people don't get that? Couple more things opponents might say. Yeah, we already pay the nation's highest property taxes. How will we ever lower property taxes? And even worse, how will we stop them from going up? Because now the unions would even have more constitutional power if the administration of a city council or teacher or school administrators wanted to fight, the unions will litigate everything and say, "Well, we'll take you to the courts." And this language in the Constitution will always back them up. And it's the same thing we've seen with pensions. Nobody wants to fight the pension protection clause anymore because the courts are with them. So this would push more people out of the state. And last is, and I mentioned this before, if you think rights have been eroded and we've seen what happened in K through 12 during COVID. Imagine now they have even more rights to negotiate in secret on more terms, on very, very iffy terms like economic welfare and safety. For them, safety might mean more CRT, more sex ed classes. It could be more, more remote learning times, all kinds of stuff. Forget it, no power. So that's it in a nutshell, and there's a lot more to it, but I think that's the gist of it. Bottom line, far more powers for the public sector unions. If that's what you're for, this is the amendment for you. But if you already think that the unions have way too much power and they've impacted property taxes, out migration, our credit rating, all those pension debts, then this is an amendment you'll want to oppose.
Thank you for that, Ted. That's amazing. Very, very good information. I like how you show the arguments that could be made for it and against it, so people can have a fair and balanced presentation of it. Um, as a parent, seeing what happened with the teacher unions across the country, whether it was the National Education Association or the American Federation of Teachers, look at what happened in Chicago Public Schools with the Chicago Teacher Union. This amendment would effectively give the unions, including that of the teacher unions, more power than the legislature in Illinois. Is that correct?
Well, that you bring up a great point that I didn't bring up. So, Illinois policy's done a good job of this, saying how many there's a 350 state laws that cover the labor laws and all that. Well, forget those laws. This would be in the Constitution. It says no law shall be passed. And so, what's the state legislature going to do? The legislature going to do? They're knocked out of this. Do we really
Right.
want our? Yeah, and then not only that, there's nothing for the governor or a governor to veto. So we're kind of destroying the separation of powers here by doing something like this.
Right, and I know Florida, they specifically stipulated that public sector unions cannot strike, and we've seen strikes here in Illinois for sure.
Yeah, so none of our neighbors allow strikes. We legally in the current law, forget Amendment 1. In the current law, we allow we allow teacher strikes, but none of our neighbors do. Indiana, Wisconsin, none of them allow teacher strikes. What's important to understand too is some people think, my gosh, we're being too harsh if we talk negatively about this. There's a bunch of states that make it illegal for local governments to collectively bargain with unions. So you take a state like Texas, or they won't let their local school districts negotiate with unions. They take care of their taxpayers or residents ahead of the union. So collective bargaining there is illegal. There's a bunch of
Right.
states where it's illegal. We're on the other extreme where we demand our local governments to negotiate. And if the unions don't like it, they can strike or they can ask for arbitration. So we're on the extreme powers before this amendment. We're on the extreme of giving our unions way too many powers relative to other states in the country.
For sure. And so Illinois was the first state through Senate Bill 0818, when Pritzker signed it last August, a year ago. We became the first state in the country to adopt the second edition of the National Sex Education Standards. So if this amendment were to pass, it would make Illinois the only state in the country that would give unions more bargaining power than the state legislature. We'd be the first one that would give that would effectively have public sector unions that have where the legislative body has limited powers, right? So,
oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean,
we'd be the
once you
first
say
one.
no laws, once you say no law shall be passed, the legislature really can't do anything.
Yeah, and
So they can't even help you bring down property taxes because they can't pass any laws that would hurt the welfare of the unions.
right. So it's an imbalance of power, one could argue. So the questions are being shown here on the side. So Therese is asking, why is this not being pushed out by our candidates? Oh, do you want me to take off that slideshow?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll just,
I guess.
you can always bring it back on if there's something you want to
Mhm.
show. So Therese is asking, why is this not being pushed out by our candidates? Where is the messaging from Republicans? I'll be honest, I haven't seen a ton of partisan effort behind this. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know why it's not being pushed. Maybe people aren't paying enough attention to what the unions are pushing. And who were the top unions, Ted, that were lobbying for this? Is that on record? Teacher unions versus
Well,
others.
so part of it, the rumor is it's all been pushed by those who, they got really ticked off at Bruce Rauner for pushing for right to work in Illinois, and the
Okay.
unions had not forgiven, so the private sector unions wanted to block this. It's hard for me to buy that, only because the powers it gives to the public sector unions are amazing, so huge, and so I think I got to say it's a group effort.
Okay.
Yeah,
And Therese, I think you bring up something important. This amendment's going to be on the November 8th ballot along with all of the candidates. So it's incumbent upon us as voters to ask those running for office, what their thoughts are on this and what their thoughts are on effectively, if, for example, it's a state legislature, do they know that they could be limited in their powers of governance if this passed? It's an educational opportunity for our communities and to talk to candidates about it. You have to
and
be the
maybe
messenger.
do they care? Do they care?
Do they care? Who are they getting money from? Right? Who's funding
Right.
their campaigns? Um, so how do we oppose? I love the simplicity of this question. Break it down. When we go to the ballot on November 8th, do we know the specific wording of this particular amendment? Is it going to be a simple yes or no, or maybe we can follow up, in another subsequent resource with what it will actually say on the ballot?
Yeah, so we have the language is expected to be on the ballot, and I didn't include it here, so I can share it with
Okay.
you, and then we can figure out how to share that. But like usual, it won't tell the truth, and it's all going to revolve around safety and safety for
A word
workers, that kind of
salad.
thing. The word salad. It sounds like, how would I be against worker safety, right, and economic welfare? But it's not that, and that's what people need to understand.
Right. So Therese added she thinks that the Republicans are afraid to upset the unions and Dems own the unions already, or vice. We could flip that maybe. Who owns who? Um,
Yeah, we have to remember it's the politicians who put this. The politicians are the ones who put this on the ballot. They voted for it, and sadly, 11 of 18 Republicans in the Senate voted for it. It was that's 60% of Republicans in the Senate who voted for it. Did they not know what they were voting for? Were they confused? That's a big question.
right.
In the House, there's many fewer Republicans have voted for it, but
Right.
it's on
So
there, and you got to hold them accountable.
for sure, Marcia said this is really terrible. I think as you build more resources, I know Wirepoints you're gonna have a hub for people to reference resources, and we'll be sharing this on our website and link to the resources you offer, so you can talk a little bit about what the wording of the ballot is, and also speak to maybe the voter roll, the roll call of when this amendment was placed on the ballot, who said it should be there and who shouldn't. It's good for voters to know that. Claudia said, I guess Chicago parents and students are screwed by Chicago teacher union. How do we oppose the amendment? So stay tuned to Wirepoints. They're going to have more resources for you to know what to answer on the ballot if you do want to oppose it. Marcia, yeah. Do you see something else, Ted? You can go ahead and just shout something
Yeah,
out.
I'm just looking here. One of the things, well, on the top of our website, if you want to educate yourself more, we have quite a few, good articles that kind of break all this down. We did one yesterday when the Wall Street Journal came out, and yesterday, Illinois Policy Institute, and we were kind of letting the Wall Street Journal know what was in this thing. So we wrote a piece about that. So you'll find all the stuff we wrote. So at the top of our website, you'll see a little red button that says Amendment 1. Click on that, and you'll have access to our writings. And in the next week, we'll have a kind of a dedicated page to this, so that you can find the writing, the actual amendment language, the pros and cons, and all those kind of things there.
Okay.
A separate thing that I see here is people are asking, where do I get yard signs? Who's organizing stuff? We know the other side. I should say the other side. The yes side is doing stuff. They've of course got money to run the ads. With the loss of Ken Griffin, who maybe would have opposed this, and maybe some of his his funding would have supported it. He's gone, so there is no real group at this point, I think, organizing the no side. So I know a lot of people are asking that, and we'll inform people of what we know at some point on both sides.
Okay, so that's a good idea, though. If you want a graphic, Awake Illinois is happy to put one at the website if you wanted to order your own signs for now. Um, and maybe even a little video would be helpful for you to circulate among your networks. So for anybody that's interested, if you have any ideas, just send them to Awake Illinois, and we can see what we can supply to help you with some resources. But share this video, share this discussion. If you guys need more data that you want to share, go to wirepoints.org. I think this is a really, really great way to be a truly informed voter, and to be empowered to have a say in these very impactful decisions. Again, Illinois would be the only state in the country that would have the all of this power dedicated to teacher unions that would eclipse that of the very legislature itself. So share anything else you want to add to that, Ted?
I was going to add just one more thing for those of you who don't follow Wirepoints. The unions have gotten so bold that was it last week or the week before when we were pointing out some of the powers of the Chicago Teachers Union and the fact that they were keeping empty, failing schools open. Some of those are 5% full. It just capacity. This one school has 1,300 kid capacity. It's only got 55 students in it, and none of them can read practically. The power of the unions is such that they came on the record on Fox 32, and instead of opposing us and debating with us, they said F Wirepoints, and they didn't say F, they said the full word.
Right.
They were on the record on that, and so that shows just how just where things are in Illinois and how much power they think they have, that they can talk that way rather than civil discourse.
Wow, that's something else. Yeah, keeping it classy. So Amy said she's seen signs of vote yes for workers. Um, yeah, how about vote no for more taxes? Vote no on the Amendment 1. I mean, people are really, really frustrated with Illinois, even when the economy is great, let alone with inflation on top of it. It's a lot. It's a lot for the people of the state. So share this recording. It will be at the Facebook page. It will also be at our blog, and like Ted said, at wirepoints.org, there will be a button dedicated to Amendment 1. So whatever resources you need, contact Ted, contact me. We'll make sure you get it so that you are truly empowered in your communities to keep your friends, neighbors, and family informed. So thank you so much for this, Ted. If there are any other questions, we can always check the comments on the Facebook post and get back to you, or you can DM us, email, call, whatever's easier. So thank you so much, Ted.
Yeah, and I had my phone call. I have my phone number up there in my email. I don't know if it stayed on the PowerPoint, but anybody can call anytime. I'm always happy to answer. And we do have a daily newsletter. Let me make one plug for sign up for Wirepoints. It helps us spread the message. The more people that are signed up for our newsletter, every day we aggregate the news that we think people should know about. We do the dirty work for you, stuff that you won't see in the traditional media. And of course, we have our own writings there. So to the extent that you can sign up, we'd really appreciate that, because then it's easier to share.
That's awesome. And you are a nonprofit, so people can make donations to keep the data and the analytics going.
Yeah, it's hard, expensive work to just always be in the numbers. But yeah, thanks for making that pitch too.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So wirepoints.org, Ted Dabrowski, president, thank you so much for joining us. We will stay tuned to your website for continued information on what Amendment 1 is. Hopefully everybody is, again, registered to vote where you are. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors about this presentation, share it, and hope everybody has a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you again, Ted, for joining us. Look forward to doing it again with you.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks to Awake Illinois. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Take care, everybody.